We have dropped in the recent Malaysia Gender Gap Index, which identifies the gap between men and women. Our government says it is committed to achieving gender equality, but where do we really stand today? Hello everyone, this is Women Talk and we're rounding off our season with our 13th and final episode, Gender Equality in Malaysia. I'm Deborah.
And I'm Siti Saleha, and today in the studio we have two wonderful guests here with us. Welcome Izzana, a highly qualified, result-oriented leader with proven experience in management, public policy, startups and international NGOs. She is also the co-founder and president of Project Girls for Girls International. Welcome Izzana.
Thank you so much, Salleh. Thanks for having me.
And here with us in the studio, we have Farah and Abdul Hadi. Who doesn't know her? Our celebrated national gymnast who has made us proud on so many number of occasions on the international arena. Welcome, Farah.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here.
Thanks, ladies. So we are so happy to have you guys here for our final episode of this season. Now, on the season over the past few months, we've been talking about women in politics, women in leadership, celebrating victories for women. And that's super important, right? We have to celebrate the wins, whether they're small or big. But we also have to recognize that discrimination and inequality still lives on. And therefore, we have ladies like you who do what you do in various different capacities. So the index I mentioned a little bit earlier actually talks about 4 different parts. Education attainment, we're actually doing quite well, but it's actually in involvement in politics and in labor participation where we've actually dropped. We're actually quite low. So Izzana, you do work which is very much in this sector.
Absolutely.
What are your thoughts?
Sure. Thank you so much, Deborah, Salleh, for the introduction. I love that we're starting with the index because you got to start with the measurements first, right? And you said that in terms of education, we're doing well. We know that women dominate when it comes to tertiary education. We're between 66 to 72% over the last 5 years in terms of women being the majority in tertiary education. But we're always at the lower end of the percentage when it comes to political participation.
Leadership.
What are we measuring? The amount of women in parliament. Who is it who's representing our voice out there, making the laws, making the policies? It's only at 14%. And you know what's really disheartening is that that's actually an improvement. Maybe about 5-7 years ago, it was about 10%. And we know 14%, that's really pittance. And when we talk about labor participation, that's what you said, right? Malaysia, we are at about 55%. But when you compare against our neighbours in the region, they're about 60%, 70%. So we really have a long ways to go. What that tells you is that if we were to just look at this as the universe, our universe here in Malaysia, that means that we don't have enough voices in Parliament representing our needs, and that can be seen by women not being empowered, whether it's a system, whether it's a policy, whether it's help on the ground to actually participate in labour. So there's a lot that needs to be done there.
So why is it that women are lacking in leadership? Why do you think
in political leadership?
Yes.
To be honest with you, and this is my observation, being on the ground, being part of political party as well, is that the structure of the political party doesn't allow. So that's first things first. The structure, you're still putting women as sayap, as a wing, as opposed to induk, part of the holding entity. You know, for as long as we consider women as secondary, it's very hard for you to take women as an equal party.
So women have been advocating for gender equality for such a long time, right? So let's go back to basics. Why is it important to achieve gender equality, Farah?
I think it's really important, especially in sports, because in sports arena, we want to empower women. And when we break it back down, women are human beings. We need to be on equal footing. It's very important that everyone has the equal opportunities and that they're able to be who they are. And I think that's very important. But if there isn't that opportunity, if we are not seen as equal, representation is not there, then how are we be able to reach our full potential if even that basis line is not there? So I think that's why it's really important for us to keep on fighting and fighting the good fight.
And you were we were talking about this earlier, you're in an industry and often you all start very, very young. You're in your teens when you start, and perhaps you have no sense or you're not clued into gender equality or opportunities, more like it, for the female gender. What was that like for you growing up?
I started very young, so not even teen. I was a bit baby. I was 3 years old when I started.
Wow.
And I've been very lucky in a sense where my sport, which is artistic gymnastics, it's quite equal setting because we have the women's side and the men's side, and I've always been surrounded by very strong women. I had a strong woman coach and teammates who are very, very strong. So I think for me, I've always been a very strong woman and I'm very opinionated in my sport, and I think that really translated when I grew up and actually started. One of the ways that I started seeing the diversity in men and women was more media representation, where my male counterparts were seen as strong and their capabilities were what was shown, whereas the female, what were they wearing, how did they look, instead of what we were presenting and what competing in our levels. And that was very disheartening for me, especially as an athlete, because of all the effort that I put in, and that is what people
They look at what you wear.
They look at what I wear. And
gender bias.
And that's one of the ways. But actually, there is actually an index, the Women in Sports action plan that came out in 2021 to 2025. And even in the Olympics that I went to, 60% of women were represented in the Malaysian team. And there's an increase in women in sports, and we are changing the landscape, the diversity. But there is only 20% or like 18% of women in leadership positions in sports. So I think that is the area that we need to work on.
Yeah.
It's always a leadership issue.
Yeah, so you see this recurring, whether it's in politics, whether it's in the corporate sector, and it's actually cross-sectoral, where you see that drop-off when it comes to decision-making positions and leadership positions. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to look at some of the glaring issues facing women in Malaysia.
I'm Datuk Robi Abdul Ghani, and I served the police force for 39 over years. I joined the police force in 1971, and then I was posted as an IO in Ipoh, Perak. When they established the Women Field Force, I was placed there, and I served in police field force for about 7 years before I got my promotion. Before 1974, even when I joined the police force, there was no equal pay. You know, we were getting less than the male officers. Even though we had the same training, we had the same, everything during training is the same. Your drill, your laws, your self-defense, your musketry, your shooting, everything is the same. So why are we getting only $50 less? Of course, that costs a lot of money. Those days, 50 ringgit is a lot of money. Equal pay was in 1st February 1974. But before that, they have already started getting all the women into the other branches of the police force. They were in the police band, they were in the police traffic, they were in most other branches in the police force. So at that time also, that's when the police field force was established. And also FRU was established, the women were established. And this equal pay was mooted, was pushed by our late Dato' Zakiah Laidin. She was the the most senior woman police officer at that time, and she pushed it together with our then IGP, Tun Hanif Umar. We were lucky, we have officers who are really concerned that we are doing equal pay. They say equal pay, equal work. Equal pay, equal work. So they push you anywhere that you have to go, you do it. To show that this is the commitment that we can give to the police force after getting the equal pay.
I find this so interesting that our police force in the 1970s had equal pay, when in parts of the West, in the 70s, they were fighting for equal rights and so much else. And it's very simplistic in nature when she says equal work, equal pay.
It's a concept we take for granted, I feel. Today, in this day and age, it's something you assume, right? You assume you will get equal pay, you assume you will get equal work. Why not? We're all capable, intelligent beings, and therefore we should be compensated the same.
Right. But it's not the case across different sectors. So while in PDRM it's good, perhaps not in other sectors.
Perhaps in sports, what is it like? I mean, you see in 1973, Billie Jean King fought for equal pay in tennis. So how is it like in sports in Malaysia?
So in Malaysia, I would say it's very equal for the athletes. So we are compensated based on performance. So when you win at the SEA Games, the Asian Games, Commonwealth Games, so there are the levels. So every time you win, obviously we don't get pay, we get allowances. So, and then there's a base allowance, and you go out based on your performance. So it really is performance-based allowances, and I think that is wonderful, because it's this what we say, equal pay, equal work, and that is really in the sports sector. And I think that the Kementerian Belia dan Sukan really has, in the spectrum of men and women, is very equal. And then when Kari Jemputan came in, it became equal for our para athletes. Then now the pay is equal all around, across the board. So whenever you perform, then your allowances will be based on how your performance goes. And I think that is such a wonderful thing. And so that's why for me in sports, I feel so empowered because of the opportunities that I've had to move that into other sectors. Because I think it's important that's how you get all sportswomen who are strong and capable, and for that to move on to different sectors.
That's so wonderful to know. I hope we can publicize the information a bit more.
Yeah, and then what's beautiful about this is, like, someone like you, having gone through the system and having equal opportunity and access, you spread that message, and you continue to do that in other aspects of your life.
And hopefully in other work industries we can get equal pay as well.
Exactly. What's it been like for you in acting?
Well, I wouldn't say, there's discrimination in all sorts of work industries, right? But I would say my focus more is on gender biases. I'm getting judged every single day, I think. Yeah, you know, because it's like stereotypical, like on how I should behave, especially coming from society. And if a man does a certain scene, it's fine, but it's frowned upon if women plays that scene. So that's what I'm kind of struggling with. Yeah.
Well, I think, you know, something that's been in the news lately, and we've been fighting against it. It's, I think, very personal for me, and perhaps you as well, Sally, is citizenship.
Right.
Yes.
And this has been, and perhaps, you know, anyone who's, I think, mixed, you think, like, for us, it's if our parents, if the roles were reversed with our mom and dad.
I can't imagine. I mean, can I say the word fortunate? I mean, we have Malaysian fathers, and we were born overseas.
Same as.
Right?
Oh, so I also have a Malaysian
father. What if it was in reverse? And I can't imagine the complications Malaysian mothers are going through, right? I mean, are Malaysian mothers less Malaysian than Malaysian fathers?
But you know what the issue is? For me, I have a Malaysian mother and father. But when my Malaysian mother was talking about this, maybe about 10, 15 years ago, I mean, this issue still permeates our society. Why hasn't there been a solution for it? Why are we still going back to the same sort of blame game? You know?
Yes.
Why do we not trust our Malaysian women enough?
Yeah.
I think it's about time we really fought.
And because you do want the government to stand up and say, like, half our population are women.
Exactly.
They matter. They contribute to the GDP. Our countries are better off with them.
That's exactly
Why
it.
are we not included?
Yeah, exactly.
Why is that right to pass your citizenship to your child not a right?
Especially when, you know, as a mother who is
the mother has given
the entire process. But you're absolutely right, you said it. They matter. So why do we not have enough push, enough movers and shakers making sure this goes through? It really breaks my heart to see this.
Yeah, and to see all the hardships, like even for my mother, who is actually Canadian, to get, even though she has we have 3 girls, and my sisters, we have 3 of us, and been married to my father for so long, it took her 15 years to get her PR because they didn't recognize, and I had already been representing the country at that time. And so she's like, my daughters both are representing the country, and you still don't acknowledge me. And it's so frustrating to see all the hardships, and especially now with Malaysian women not being able to have that equal opportunity and the biasness, especially you were saying, in all the industries, it's really striking down women's opportunities, and also everything they contribute to society is just being overlooked, and it's just sad.
That's right. It's sad because my mother went through the same thing living in Malaysia, so it's like things need to.
We all share the same plight.
It has to change.
Yeah, it has to change.
It's been way too long. It's been way too long.
And this is a problem. A lot of these issues, you know, it's been discussed in Parliament or discussed amongst non-profits for decades. It's not a 2-year, 3-year thing, as you say, Izzana. It's long. You need decision makers, lawmakers to be able to get on it, make decisions, and move on.
And to be honest with you, I mean, we've seen so many legal changes being brought up in Dewan Rakyat, Dewan Negara, etc. What I hope to see in this specific issue is a leader with the gravitas and the sustainable power to see this through the end. It is whether the leader wants to help the issue or not. So I really hope, and I hope through this show we can actually make a call to action for someone out there who has the power to actually see this situation through, because our women matter. The mothers matter, the children matter, they all matter.
Yeah, and ultimately it harms us. Not including people, not recognizing people, it harms our country, it harms our economy, and the social fabrics are not better off for it. So something that, it kind of makes sense, it seems logical, yet we sometimes drag our feet. We're going to take a quick break now. We'll be back after this.
Yes, I have been discriminated once. I remember it came out in the papers. It was by a minister. It was in the 90s. And he actually said that, you know why Sheila Majid made it? Is because she's a woman. Now, what are you insinuating there? Is it because I'm a woman, more men want to look at? Or I'm a woman, more men will buy my albums? What are you insinuating when you say that Sheila Majid made it because she's a woman? So I find that very, discriminating lah. Why can't you say I made it because of my hard work?
As more and more women enter the workforce and are not stay-at-home mums, we find a very interesting conversation happening now regarding paternity and maternity leave. And recently, Izzana, I'm sure you can speak on this, the days were increased. Baby steps,
a little bit.
Not quite anything compared to Scandinavia. But what does this mean for men and women?
So, if I'm not mistaken, the paternity leave has gone up from 3 to 7 days, and for maternity leave has gone up from 60 to 98 days, if I'm not mistaken. So, like you said, baby steps, literally baby steps. But what we want to do is we want to be a first-class nation, right? That's always our goal, whether you are a leader in government, whether you are part of civil liberties. We want to push our nation and our people and our policies to one that we can be proud of. So what's the best way to do that? You got to benchmark. And you benchmark against countries that are exemplary in this. And so you spoke about Scandinavian countries. And during the break, we talked about how year after year after year, the top 5 countries in the World Economic Forum Gender Gap Report, meaning the ones with the least gap between men and women, are these Scandinavian countries. Iceland, you don't have to speak about them. They're always number 1, followed by Norway, Finland, and Sweden, Denmark, high happiness index and all that. So we want to see the policies that they've done. And you were mentioning it as well, that, their paternity and maternity leave, 1, far longer than what we have. And number 2, there's a real focus on equality. Paternity and maternity leave, a same number of days. What does that translate to? That means that what happens in the home, the men start leaning in true partnership of the home. Therefore, you rely less on foreign labor to support you at home, right? Like over here, we're very dependent.
Domestic workers.
Domestic workers, exactly. And also then the next step to it is how you raise children. When you have both your mother and your father at home raising the next generation, it speaks a lot. It caters a lot to the culture.
And this knocks on like our cultural norms, which you touched on a little bit earlier, that this is the role of a father, and this is the role
stereotypical
of the mother. And also I feel that we can't talk about gender equality without addressing men, because very often we kind of like put them aside as if they're not affected at all.
But we need them for us to achieve gender equality.
That's one. And also the fact that they need to also be vulnerable. They need to also not be forced into these like definitions of what you need to be, right? And that leads to toxic masculinity and whatnot.
Exactly. So gender equality journey doesn't only talk about the women's journey. That's why we use gender, right? It's about everyone. Because today, you touched on toxic masculinity. You want to be able to give space for both men and women. And when we talk about equality, I think it's very important to remind ourselves that we're talking about cerebral opportunities. We're talking about the ability to deliver. Because sometimes you're like, well, are you trying to say you're trying to be a man? When I hear that kind of conversation, sometimes I check out a bit because it's very hard. You got to go to basics. But we're talking about cerebral equality. That's what we want.
What about traditional roles? I mean, is it still being said like, okay, perempuan sepatutnya dekat dapur je masak untuk suami, jangan kerja, like that stereotypical. Farah, is that still
in Malaysia, especially in the sporting industry, or even in general, I think it's still very much where the woman's place is at home, or she needs to act in a certain way and men act in a certain way, and that's why we get like gender stereotypes where men need to be hyper masculine, they need to be strong, and then women are the more feminine, and I think that's why it's such a problem, because the men aren't able able to express themselves and show all their emotions, and then women are then now segregated into their own little box. And we just say we need to have that gender equal where everyone is able to express themselves as a human being, as the person that they are, instead of the gender that they are now placed into, and that's how they're supposed to act. I think that's one very important.
Because actually gender norms and gender roles, they're all a societal construct. What does that mean? That means like people before us at some juncture in our lifetime said that, man, you do this, woman, you do this.
But I kind of enjoy the privileges as a woman as well, you know, like men paying for meals and, you know, getting door for you. But if you want gender fairness, you also pay for the meals. Like you get the door for the
Yes, you pay, why not?
Yeah.
But I think actually at the end of the day, if that makes you happy, then go for it, right?
It comes down to choice, right? A woman being able to exercise her freedom to choose whatever she wants.
Not because you've been stifled, not because you've been caged, not because someone else, besides from your own free will, said that you need to do this. If that makes you happy and you choose to do it, by all means, why not?
Because that's one of the arguments, right, that men kind of bring up when we talk about gender equality, is that, oh, now that means like women have to just open their door themselves and pay themselves. Well, for me, it really boils down to, as a human being, like being able to open a door for someone is just being kind and well-mannered. And it really does come back down to, are you well-mannered that you feel so aggressive?
Do you need some bonus points? I'm just checking the two.
To be like, oh, now that... So I think, and that's why like everyone should be able to be their own selves and be happy with the fact, you know, like if a man opens a door for me, I'm happy. If a woman opens a door for me, I'll be happy as well.
That's manners, right?
Manners. So basically, just closing up, we have like no minutes left. I just want to quickly touch on this. Whose responsibility is it? Because we can always look to our governments and say, where are the laws, where are the acts? But we talked a little bit about this, I think, off air. The roles of big companies. If you're an informed, self-aware individual and you are in a position to make decisions, individuals, what can we do at all different levels? If you can touch on that.
Sure. To be honest with you, we're all responsible. As a government, you got to look at the laws. Companies, you got to set a benchmark. Civil liberties, you've got to be able to push, question, and individuals, you've got to decide what's right and wrong and be able to role model it.
Yeah, I think, exactly what she said. It's like every single level, we have all opportunities and we need to show examples to be able to move our society forward, and everyone needs to be accountable for their actions.
Perfectly
said.
It's
amazing.
Women make up half of our country. We are worse off without including them. It contributes, whether economically, financially, whether just because it's the right thing to do and it's the moral thing to do. There are many, many reasons as to why we should perhaps, you know, next time we have you guys on here talking about gender equality,
we love it.
We should be celebrating far more accomplishments at that point.
I hope so too. It's just good HR management, right?
Exactly.
Using all your resources.
Exactly, using all your resources. Thank you so much, ladies, for being on the show.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having us.
And thank you guys for tuning in to Women Talk. We'll see you again very soon.
Bye.
One minute though.
Hi. One more time. How extreme are you?
I almost went bankrupt.
Overcome that.
Yeah.
Sorry, one more time.
And women's contributions have been invaluable. Okay.
Mind sharing with us and how you overcome that?
Sure, I almost went bankrupt because I was doing my own concert and...
I called you Dato. Sorry lah. Maafkan saya.
Oh my God, I didn't even hear.